The summer sun bled across the desert like a dying fire, turning every stone red and every shadow long enough to swallow a man whole. Thus devils twisted through the empty plains, and the only sound for miles was the rhythmic clop of a tired old horse fighting for each step. On its back rode a cowboy with a torn hat, a patch duster, and pockets so empty the wind whistled through them. His name was Calder Boone, and he had been broke for so long he'd forgotten what coins felt like. But even a starving man had pride, and Calder's pride was the only thing that kept him upright. As the desert drained him to the bone, he was heading south toward a rumor that an outpost near the White Mesa was looking for riders. It wasn't much, but work was work. He'd had worse reasons to keep living. By late afternoon, Calder spotted something unusual in the distance, a buzzard circle, low and deliberate, spiraling above a canyon ridge like a dark omen. His horse snorted uneasily. Buzzards meant death, and where there was death in Apache country, there was danger. Calder tugged the reins. He should have kept riding, should have minded his own business, should have remembered that broke cowboys couldn't afford heroics. But something gnawed at him. It wasn't conscience, at least he didn't think it was. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe loneliness had driven him half delirious. Either way, he nudged his horse toward the ridge. The scene he found stopped him cold. A young Apache warrior lay face down in the dirt, his leg crushed beneath a fallen mare. The horse was long dead, but the rider wasn't. Calder dismounted slowly, hands visible, knowing full well that if even one Apache scout watched from the rocks, he could die before he blinked. But the desert stayed silent. The warrior's breathing was ragged, shallow. Blood matted his hair and streaked his chest. The mare must have rolled in panic after a fall, trapping him beneath her weight. "Easy now," Calder murmured, more to the air than to the unconscious man. He slid his hands under the dead horse's flank, braced his legs, and pushed with everything he had. Muscles screamed. His ribs felt like they were cracking, but the weight shifted just enough for him to drag the warrior free. The young man groaned in agony. The leg was broken, crushed, maybe. He wasn't going anywhere on his own. Calder looked around the empty canyon and exhaled through his teeth. "Hell, you're gonna get me killed, kid." He hoisted the warrior across his horse, then climbed up behind him. The desert was too hot, too exposed, to watch to linger. There was only one safe direction. He had to take the boy back to his people, the Apache stronghold, just north of the ridge. Every instinct told him this was foolish. No white man rode willingly into Apache land unless he had a death wish or a peace treaty. Calder had neither, but leaving the boy to die wasn't something he could stomach. Mercy was a strange disease. Once it took hold, it made fools of men. So Calder rode. The canyon walls tightened as he approached the Apache borderlands. The wind seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere far off came the faint echo of drums, soft, steady, ancient. Calder swallowed. He knew he was already being watched. A man didn't cross this land unobserved. He didn't bother reaching for his revolver. It wouldn't matter. If they wanted him dead, he'd be dead already. Near dusk, he spotted movement ahead, shadows slipping between the rocks like living smoke. Then a sharp whistle cut through the air. 3 Apache warriors emerged, bows drawn, arrows aimed squarely at Calder's heart. A 4th stepped forward, broad-shouldered, stern, with a single white feather braided into his hair. His voice was cold as river stone. "Why do you carry our dead?" "He ain't dead," Calder called back, keeping his hands open. "Not yet." The warriors exchanged glances. The leader approached slowly, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the wounded youth. Something flickered behind his mask of stone, anger, then fear, then something deeper. "This is Nantan Losa," the leader said, "son of our chief." Calder's stomach twisted. Wonderful. He hadn't just saved any Apache, he'd saved royalty. That meant expectations, protocol. Worse, it meant consequences. The leader gestured, and Calder gently lowered the boy into waiting arms. The warriors carried Nantan away with an urgency that made Calder's pulse spike. The leader remained. "You brought him back," he said. It wasn't gratitude. It was an accusation. "Why?" Calder shrugged. "Because he'd have died if I didn't." The leader studied him for a long, uncomfortable moment. "You show mercy," he said finally. "A rare thing among your kind." Calder almost snorted. "You ain't seen my kind lately." The leader ignored the comment. You will come with us. The chief will decide your fate. That was not the outcome Calder had hoped for, but he wasn't in a position to negotiate. He followed the warriors into a hidden valley where fires glowed between the cottonwoods, and elders whispered around them. Children watched him with wide eyes. Women glared with suspicion. Warriors tracked his every move. Calder felt like a wolf strolling into a cattle pen. They brought him before a tall, weathered man with the eyes of someone who had seen too much war and too many winters. This was Chief Grey Hawk, father of the wounded youth. He stepped close enough that Calder could smell the cedar smoke on his skin. My son lives because of you, the chief said quietly. But you have crossed our land without permission. You have seen our hidden valley. You have placed my people at risk. Calder nodded. I didn't mean no harm. I was just passing through. The chief's gaze was steady, unreadable. There is a price for mercy, always. Those words settled like stones in Calder's gut. You will stay until my son awakens, Grey Hawk continued. He will tell us what happened. Then, and only then, will I decide whether you walk out of this valley alive. The warriors closed in around Calder. He lifted his hands in surrender. While he muttered, guess my job hunt will have to wait. They placed him in a watch hut near the center of camp. Not a jail, but not freedom either. A guard sat outside the door with a spear, silent as a statue. As the hours passed, the night grew thick and cold. Calder listened to the distant chants, the flicker of flames, the stirring of restless spirits. He shouldn't have helped that kid, shouldn't have meddled, should have kept his head down and ridden south. But some choices couldn't be undone. Near midnight, the door creaked open. A young Apache woman stepped in, lean, fierce, with eyes like polished obsidian. She carried medicine herbs and a water skin. You saved my brother, she said, her voice low and measured. For that, I bring you water. Calder accepted it cautiously. How is he? Alive, fighting. She paused. My name is Apache. Calder, he replied. She studied him for a moment, then leaned closer. My father fears your kindness has a cost. White men do not help Apaches unless they want something in return. I didn't want nothing, Calder said. Just couldn't leave him. Apache's eyes softened, barely. Perhaps you speak truth, but truth does not always matter. Fear shapes judgment more than reason. With that, she slipped out of the hut. Calder sat alone, staring at the ceiling, listening to the eerie desert winds whisper over the valley. He thought about the boy, about the chief, about the way every pair of eyes in the camp looked at him like he was a snake warming itself at their fire. This wasn't mercy, this was a noose tightening slowly. By dawn, the camp had come alive with urgent murmurs, footsteps, shouts, then the guard outside. Calder's door sounded a sharp warning whistle. More footsteps thundered in. The door swung open to reveal Chief Grey Hawk himself, pale with fury. My son has awakened, he said. He has named you. You must come now. Calder's pulse spiked. Named me. For what? Grey Hawk stepped aside, and the earth itself seemed to freeze as he spoke. For the blood on his horse. For the men who hunted him. For the danger that follows you. Because of your mercy, 300 Apache now stand ready for war. Calder's breath caught in his chest as the chief finished. And they are gathering at your door. Chaos swept through the Apache Valley, like a dust storm ripping through dry mesquite. Warriors poured between the lodges, weapons in hand, painting their faces with soaked charcoal and red clay. Horses were saddled, arrows were fletched, drums boomed like a heartbeat that belonged to the land itself. Calder Boone stood in the center of it all, still half awake, still stunned by the chief's words. The fury in the camp wasn't directed at him yet, but he felt the heat of it. Every Apache eye was narrowed, suspicious, measuring him against their memories of broken treaties and blood under the desert sun. Grey Hawk led him through the chaotic camp. Warriors stepped aside with tense shoulders as they passed. Calder caught glimpses of children hiding behind skirts, of elders murmuring prayers to old spirits. Everyone felt what was coming: war, revenge, justice, whatever name might be carved into the dawn. Calder's boots sunk into the dust as he followed the chief toward a large lodge. The air grew heavy with incense and whispering flames. Inside, on a bed of woven blankets, lay Nantan Losa, the wounded youth Calder had saved. His leg was wrapped in soaked herbs. His chest rose and fell unevenly. But his eyes were open now, sharp with pain and anger. Alashani stood beside him, and when Calder entered, she stiffened like a bowstring being drawn. Greyhawk nodded toward his son. "Speak," he said. "Tell this man what you told us." Nanton's gaze locked onto Calder. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't hatred either. It was something heavier, something that bore the weight of the consequences. Calder never asked for. "I was hunted," Nanton said, voice raw. "Not by your people. Not by mine." He swallowed hard. "By the Ruger gang. They killed 2 of our scouts. They chased me across the mesa. They tried to take me alive." Calder's jaw tightened. The name struck him like a hammer. The Ruger gang wasn't just dangerous. They were infamous. A pack of ex-soldiers turned bounty hunters turned killers for hire. They didn't track for justice. They tracked for coin. They were wolves dressed in boots and belts. If they chased an Apache youth across the desert, it wasn't curiosity. They had a contract. Greyhawk folded his arms. "My son says you were among them." Calder's breath hitched. "What?" Nanton continued, eyes unwavering. "They said your name, Cowboy. They spoke it when they found me. They said the man we hunt is the same man the Apaches shelter. They said you cost them a fortune." Calder cursed under his breath. Everything snapped into place. Of course the world wasn't cruel enough. It had to be ironic too. "I did ride with them," Calder admitted. "Years ago. Before I knew what they really were. Before I got tired of killing men who never deserved it. I ran, and they didn't like that. I might have taken something of theirs when I left. Nothing big, just their payroll." Greyhawk's eyes widened. Alashani stiffened. Nanton inhaled sharply. "How much?" Greyhawk asked. Calder winced. $6,000. Gasps filled the lodge. $6,000 was a fortune. Enough to buy land. Enough to buy soldiers. Enough to hire an army. "And now," Calder said, "they want it back." Alashani stepped forward, fury sharp in her voice. "Your past has brought death to our border. We are preparing for war because of you." Calder stood tall. "I didn't ask your son to get tangled with them. I didn't know he'd be anywhere near. You should have left him where he lay." She hissed. Calder's face hardened. "I don't leave folks to die." The tent fell silent. The flames crackled. Outside, war drums continued pounding like thunder. Greyhawk looked between his son and Calder. "Ruger gang hunts you. They threaten my people. They know my son's name, my land, my valley. 300 Apache now stand ready to fight." Calder swallowed. "I didn't mean for any of this. But meaning is not the same as consequence," the chief said. Nanton clenched his fists. "Father, he saved me. If not for him, I would be dead under my horse, and the Ruger dogs would have taken my scalp as a trophy." Alashani hesitated, shame flickering behind her anger. Greyhawk exhaled slowly. "We will not kill a man for his mercy, even if that mercy brings danger to our doorstep. But we will not hide behind it either." He turned to Calder. "You have two choices." Calder braced himself. "One," Greyhawk said. "You leave this valley now, alone. Tonight, you draw the Ruger gang away from my people. You take your death on the trail where it belongs." Calder grimaced. "Not my favorite option." "Two," Greyhawk continued. "You stay. But if you stay, you fight with us. You will stand with the Apache. You will defend this valley as if it were your own." A hush stretched between them. The choice was obvious, but it wasn't easy. If he left, the Ruger gang would chase him to the ends of the desert. If he stayed, he'd be fighting alongside people who barely trusted him. People who might still kill him if they felt he deserved it. Calder looked at Nanton, at Alashani, at the chief. "I didn't start this fight," Calder said quietly, "but I reckon I ought to finish it." Greyhawk nodded. "Then the Apache stand at your side." Alashani frowned. "Father, he saved your brother," Greyhawk said, "and now he will save us." The decision was made. Suddenly a horn blast ripped through the valley, long, sharp, urgent. The warriors outside shouted warnings. Horses screamed. Mothers pulled children into the lodges. The ground itself seemed to tremble beneath the stampede of approaching hooves. Greyhawk rushed outside. Calder followed. At the edge of the valley, black shapes emerged through the swirling dust. Riders. Dozens at first, then hundreds. The Ruger gang had grown since Calder once knew them. They had mercenaries now, hired guns, deserters, thieves, gang members wearing stolen uniforms of dead cavalry. men whose faces were carved with greed and hunger, and they were fully armed. Alashani whispered, "There must be 50 of them." Greyhawk's eyes narrowed. "Look again." As the dust settled, Calder's breath froze. It wasn't 50. It wasn't 100. It was 300 riders, the same number of Apache, now preparing to defend their land. The Ruger gang had come in force. A man rode forward from their lead, tall, with a beard streaked in gray and a grin sharp enough to cut bone. Calder recognized him instantly. Silas, Ruger, leader of the gang. The devil on horseback. Ruger raised his voice across the canyon. "Calder Boone, time to come home, boy. You've been overdue on your debts." Calder stepped forward so the whole valley could see him. "I ain't paying a damn cent." Ruger grinned wider. "Then we're talking it out of your hide, and anyone fool enough to stand beside you." The Apache warriors spread out, bows raised, spears braced, rifles loaded. The valley crackled with tension. Greyhawk stood beside Calder. "The moment you showed mercy," he said softly, "you doomed us or saved us. The next moments will decide which." Calder lifted his revolver, spinning the cylinder with a flick of his fingers. "Then let's make 'em count." Ruger raised his hand, the order for attack. The Apache war cry split the sky, and the valley exploded into battle.